operating budget. What is it? It is basically a detailed projection of what an organization expects to receive because it needs to spend certain amount, right? Over a specific period of time. Oftentimes we talk about yearly operating budgets, right? So it's how much money I'm needing to spend, and therefore how much money do I need to get in order to operate throughout that year. So what do operating budgets look like, right? Like here's an example of someone that has their revenue all the way at the top and then a list of expenses. Here's another example of another operating budget, a little bit more beautiful design and the colors of the organizations, right? And we see how they have different sections to talk about their expenses. Here's another option or another sample of operating budget, right? This is a little bit more simple. And we see that they have their expenses in one place and they talk about revenue in other places. So this means that this operating budget needs to find other ways in which these two types of things that we want to have in a budget speak to each other. So today, we want to make sure that we build an operating budget that works for you. It could look like this, it could look like that, it could look like this, or it could look in whatever other way and color you need it to look like. So we are going to build yours if you don't have one. And because the majority of you have an operating budget, we're hoping that as we go along, you get to revise yours, validate some of the things that you're already doing, and improve some others if there's something we can give to you, right? So step number one, as you work on your operating budget, is to map your expenses. What is it that you need to spend on in the year to come, right? So how many programs are you running? That will shift your operating budget. How much personnel do you need to cover the running of those programs and your operations? Are you also accounting for other things that are in programmatic, such as your website subscription or your phone bill, right? All of these other things that are going to be expenses that you make that are not necessarily going to affect or transform a life directly. So there's a difference between what are your fixed expenses and what are your variable expenses. So I'll give you the example of Radical Partners. My fixed expenses, my first priority is salaries. Why? Because our work is service work. So Radical Partners cannot function if I don't have the right people in the jobs, right? So salaries is one of the most important things, and it's a fixed expense for our organization. Other things such as insurance, if we have rent, if we have the website subscription, as I was telling you, there's things that are not going to vary constantly or very often. On the contrary, my programs shift significantly, right? They are going to be variable expenses depending on how many programs I run in that year, how many people are going to be part of that program. Do I need to bring any other contractors? Do I need to pay for business meals right before giving season starts? There's other things that are seasonal, right? And we recommend that you separate these so that you know what are kind of like the core needs of what you need to raise for, and then what are these other variable expenses that you can raise on a seasonal basis. So high level, this is how an operating budget can look like on the expenses side. So if you follow me on this column, you can see that we group everything into personnel costs, right? So we have an example here of we need a senior director of marketing, we need a director of programs, we need to account for benefits, team building, all of that we bundle into personnel costs. Secondly, we have contractors. Why? Because they aren't full-time employees. So then we have them separately because we might spend less or more in fundraising, in accounting, in a lawyer, and a few other contracting services. Then we bundle operations, we bundle fixed costs, and only at the end, we have programs, right? Because one program will cost 15K, another program will cost 45K. So when you add all these things up, I have the projected total of what I will need to spend. You want to make sure that your budget is not in a PDF, but it lives in a document that can be updated so that you can project different scenarios and move things around. If you ditch a program, if you double on another program, etc. And then if you follow me to the right side of the screen, we do something very similar to the expenses side, but we do it on the revenue side. And then we do the same thing. Where can the money that we need come from, right? So we have in the first row, we have individual giving. Let's make sure that I will receive some gifts. In our case, a lot of foundations for our work, right? So Foundation 1, Foundation 2, Foundation 3, to not name any names. Then we get sponsorships, there's membership income, there's program service fees. There's a lot of different options here. You don't need to have all of them. You know better than me what your revenue streams are. So that was kind of like when people group things bigger, especially when you're a larger organization, you start grouping things a little bit more. But we've seen operating budgets that are very detailed, right? So in my case, I say like office operations and I include everything. But in here, you can see that they have office supplies, internet is separate, rent is separate, the telephone is separate, travel is separate, right? So you get to be as detailed or as big a picture as you need and want. And sometimes funders will ask you to zoom in on your expenses or zoom out on your expenses. So this is an ability that will come over time. So if you're new in building operating budget, I recommend that you start with a lot of detail and then you do the grouping instead of the opposite. Because it's oftentimes that, especially in this sector, most of us are very hopeful of what things can cost and look like. So if we don't account for all of the details, we might be representing what it actually costs to run a program. So all of that is only step one. So we recommend that you outline your operating budget at least once a year. Inflation, change of administration, change of leadership in your organization, so many things are going to be different year after year that we suggest that every year you make this exercise of projecting how much will you want or need to spend in the following year. We go to step number 2. Once you've identified the expenses, you identify where the money is coming from, as I was explaining to you earlier, right? In our sector, these are the common revenue streams that we see and that we have. Individual donations, corporate philanthropy, right? And sponsorships that come that way or grants that come that way. Some of you are making earned income, right? Respecting all of the guidelines from the IRS. Some of you do fee for service and give some workshops. You have some other things that you offer as earned income for your 501c3. Some of you get future investments, and most of us highly depend on grants. So these are some of the examples that you can find in our sector, right? So how much are you projecting to come from each of these revenue streams? So if you have a track record of work at this point, you should know, like, oh, about 50% of my money comes from grants every year, 30% comes from individual donations, and the other percentage I need to figure out that comes from somewhere, and it could be miscellaneous, right? So just like any other business in other sectors, you need to understand where the money is coming from so that you can target or tailor your approach accordingly. So this is kind of like the upper part of your operating budget, right? And the revenue, you can have it to the top or you have it to the right. We recommended at the beginning that you work on your expenses on a yearly basis. But what we recommend is that you track or review your revenue on a quarterly basis, because we project for a year, right? But it could be that the first quarter, it was great. Therefore, maybe you can allow yourself to not work as hard. But the reality is that to most of us, it's actually the opposite, that in the first quarter of the year, we didn't reach or we didn't get what we wanted because there's delays, because there's obstruction in giving. So that means that you need to compensate in the next quarter, and therefore you probably need to adapt your strategies. So we strongly recommend that on a quarterly basis, you have a check-in with your team or a check-in with yourself if you are your only team member, to review and have that moment of reality of where you are in terms of your projections, and if you need to step up or step back in terms of your efforts. Once you're done with expenses, with your projection of the revenue streams, step number 3, it is very important for you to track and update your budget accordingly. Some of us get to have an accountant or someone that helps us do that. Some of us don't, right? But right now, that's where we can leverage technology and YouTube videos and webinars like this ones and the resources that we're going to give you, so that you have tools that are going to allow you to track and update your budget. What does that look like? We move to this part of the spreadsheet, right? So if we have the revenue at the top, the expenses underneath, you want to always have a comparison between what you budgeted for something and how much you've actually spent on something, right? So if I estimated that I was going to receive $50,000 in individual donations, the reality is that right now I'm at 25. It means that I only have 5 months to get the other 25. And then same thing when it comes to expenses, right? If I said I'm going to spend $10,000 on insurance, but actually it was cheaper this year, I can already start seeing that I might have some money that I won't use at the end of the year. And if by Q3 I'm there, I want to start asking myself, what can I do with this money if I'm not going to spend it on insurance? So it goes both ways. So the pro tip here is that you should be tracking your revenue and your expenses at least once a month. Some of us have larger operations and you need to do this on a weekly basis, or you have people full-time doing this on a daily basis. So depending on where you are, at least you should, at the end of each month, close the month with the understanding of how much you spent, how much you brought, so that you can start seeing the balance. Are you spending more than what you're bringing? Are you bringing more than what you're spending? And all of that information is relevant information for you to make decisions. So, okay, Joanne, I have this beautiful spreadsheet. What do I do with it? So just in case there's doubt or still complicated feelings between you and your operating budget, having one is very important because, first of all, it enables high quality change making. That's what we do, right? So if we have a solid operating budget, it will allow us to do our work well and therefore transform lives together. Number 2, it guides strategy and decision making. If nobody's showing up to this program, can then we start spending less in this program, right? So moving things around your operating budget will allow you to make decisions. It also builds trust with funders and other stakeholders because it shows them that we know what we're doing, what it needs to be done, and that we're asking for helping in a very informed way. And then to bring some hope into this conversation, it prepares you for growth, right? Because I'm hopeful that at some point you will start detecting a surplus or that you're bringing more than what you're spending on certain things. So this is money that you will be able to invest more or invest back in the community or back in the organization, right? Using that insurance example that I gave you, let's say we have $2,000 left at the end of the year. Can we spend it on workshops for the team, right? Or can we have a mini retreat to celebrate that we ended up with a surplus? There's a few things that you could do to invest back in the organization if you're not pouring everything into the community. What can you do with that operating budget? In almost every single fundraising or grant application, they will ask you for an operating budget, right? So this is a document that you want to have handy, that you want it for it to look beautiful and branded with your organization so that whenever that time comes, you're ready to send out the budget or upload it into whatever platform. Number 2, it also helps you to plan, to manage, and to sustain your mission. Number 3, if you have a board, it allows you to get buy-in from the board for strategic moves, right? Because when that moment, when you get the budget approved comes, just like what the mayor is doing right now, you are inserting some of strategic moves and some decisions there, like I need to hire this new person, I need to do this. And when your board sees it in the operating budget, there's alignment between strategy and what needs to be done. So it allows for that buy-in to happen, and then you can move forward. It allows you to manage cash flow, right? So again, to project how months are doing. And let's not underestimate that your operating budget will also allow you to sleep better at night. So I've done enough before I move forward. You should be outlining your expenses at least once a year. You should be revising your revenue streams at least once a quarter. You should be tracking your expenses and your revenue at least once a month. We need to work on our mindsets weekly, and I'm not going to go there, right? But I think we need to start shifting or continue to shift our relationship with money and the asks and the back and forth on a weekly basis. And then don't forget to move smartly on a daily basis, right? So in the personal finance world, we talk about the latte effect, right? That you spend $5 on a coffee every single day, and that immediately adds up to a significant amount per month. And you could be doing the same thing in your organization if you're not being thoughtful about what you buy and what you're spending your money on, right? So moving smartly is on a daily basis. So aside from you working on your operating budget, what we want to make sure with this session is that you are leveraging that to prepare for this year's Give Miami Day. So we turn your operating budget into your fundraising goal for this year. So we want you to leverage that document to be as happy as Julissa is on Give Miami Day. So for that, we're only talking about individual donations as a revenue stream here, right? Give Miami Day is not for grants. We are not looking for earned income there or for sponsorships. We are looking for people to donate to our organization. Therefore, we need to be very clear on how much we would like to receive from people, so that we say, okay, I'm going for 1,000, 5K, 10K, or up to millions that some organizations raise during Give Miami Day. And then you need to be very clear on what you will be using those donations for, because your donors want to know. They want to know, oh, Ontaria needs help to buy a vehicle, and Gabi needs help to support 10 families, right? Like that is what you will be using to communicate with your donors so that they are a little bit more inclined to give to you on Give Miami Day. So is it general operating the budget? Is it programs? Is it communications campaign? Is it a particular priority? You decide. So after you do that, we want you to identify where that money is coming from, because within the individual donations that you will receive, you've got options such as, are you messaging past donors? Are you aiming for new donors? Are you going to be asking your friends and family to fundraise with you? Are you going to be looking for matches? The Miami Foundation oftentimes has prices. Are you going to be very competitive around one of those prices? So only within the individual donations revenue streams goes Give Miami Day, and within Give Miami Day, you get to select where the money is coming from. So it's kind of like a mini operating budget just for Give Miami Day, okay? So in that spreadsheet that you opened, the last tab is called Give Miami Day 2025. And we want you to set a goal. It doesn't matter if it seems crazy to you, just have it. It's your North Star. Right now, it's only you who's going to know. And throughout the process, you might change that, right? And I want you to think very quickly, this year, where do you want to put in your efforts? Are you going to invest in past donors? Are you going to invest in new donors? Are you going to aim for peer-to-peer pages? And if you have some ideas on like, you know what, Give Miami Day will enable me to do this. So to give you a very concrete example, Radical Partners wanted to raise about 40K last year. We raised them and we used those dollars to pay for a management consultant firm that I wanted to hire for years now to work on our organizational structure and culture, and I wasn't able to. So Give Miami Day allowed me to do that, thanks to past donors that believe in Radical Partners and know Radical Partners. So I'm going to give you one song for you to go back to that spreadsheet, go to that tab, and try to fill this out. Again, just so that you start playing with zeros and numbers. How much do you want to raise? Who are you going to ask? And for what will that money be used? Go. So much for your attention and powering us through speed with us. Hopefully you have a template to use. You will have a recording to rewatch if you want to. And I'm going to pass it to Luz so that she.
Alrighty, team. As you are continuing sharing your feedback, I would love to hear from some of you, from one person in the chat, in the room, a takeaway from this session. So please don't be shy, unmute yourself, and if you can share one of your biggest takeaways of today's session.
Ask for more.
Sunny, what are you saying?
Ask for more. Like,
okay.
So if you have a need, do not be scared to ask for more.
Love it. Love it. And then how that is tied to your mission and the work that you're doing. So I love that. That was an insight from today. Gabby, I see you went off mute.
Yeah, for me was follow your expenses and your revenue monthly to make sure that you're on target.
Love it. And I see some answers in the chat as well. So planning is key, money and planning, get organized, hearing from the different perspectives. Remedy.
I feel empowered. I feel like it makes sense now what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And definitely, yeah, ask for more, but be clear on what you're asking for. And now I get like, okay, I'm creating strategy to meet this goal that I've set. So good job, y'all. Thank you.
Love it. Thank you so much.